There we go. It's going to be recorded. So just be cognizant of that. You know, it might influence your decision to be on camera or not, whatever. It's all up to you. Okay, Murray.
So thanks, Fiona, as always, for organizing this and managing it. You're amazing, and you make these go so smoothly. And good evening, everybody. And just as I'm warming up, Serene, if you want to share your screen. And so thank you all for coming out. I think this is one of the great opportunities where we're hoping to be able to work collaboratively with municipal staff and representatives from the community to try and develop a design for a new or expanded parkette at the corner of Byron and Churchill. So this is, yeah, you can go to the second screen, Serene. Thank you. So this is the site plan or the landscape plan for the proposed apartment building at the corner of Byron and Churchill. The zoning was approved by council back in November, and it's now in full force and effect. We are still working our way through the site plan approval process related to the building itself and the immediate landscaping around it. But you'll notice on this landscape plan that the area up in the top left-hand corner, which is the area of the proposed parkette, has basically been left blank. And that was because it wasn't formally part of the site plan application. What this plan does show, though, is a significant reduction in the length of Byron Place. Currently, it extends almost to Churchill Avenue, and that's in order to provide access to a number of the properties along the south side of Byron Place. Our site plan has shown cutting back or reducing the length of Byron Place quite significantly. It's still required in order to provide emergency fire access to the development going forward. So the Byron Place can't get any shorter or smaller than is shown on this plan, but it certainly opens up the opportunity to do something really interesting with the lands that are going to be freed up where we can remove a significant portion of Byron Place. The next slide, please, Serene. So, one of the features of this corner is this existing sculpture. I think is called the Tree of Life. It's a spectacular piece of art. And any of the proposals to develop the parkette will obviously protect, preserve, maintain this spectacular piece of public art that already sits on the corner of the property. I'm going to turn things over now to Ryan James. Ryan James is one of the lead landscape architects with Novatech. He and members of his team developed the three concepts that we're going to talk about tonight. They're not new. They were actually submitted with the original applications probably more than a year ago, just to start a conversation about what we might be able to do with this piece of land to serve the needs and expectations of the residents in the neighborhood. There's three very different concepts, and I'll let Ryan just walk everybody through those. So, Ryan, over to you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Murray. Serene, I guess if we could have the first concept. Creative name concept number one. We just called them 1, 2, and 3. They're just ideas we're putting on the table, as Murray said, to generate some conversation. I don't expect that any one of these is going to be adopted by everybody. We'll probably end up with something, hopefully that there's some influence, positive influence that people see here. But these are just some ideas that we're throwing out there. Before I get into some specifics about number one, I'm going to start with a few common elements that you'll find in all three of the concepts. First, as Murray said, the existing art installation is a piece of all three of these. That is going to be staying. There's also a couple of low walls on Churchill Avenue that the city put in a few years ago. We made an effort to keep those as well. since the city built them not so long ago. They're in good condition. Those will be staying there as well, and some existing trees. Some existing trees will come out for the Byron Place shortening, but where we can, we are keeping what we can. A few other things to be aware of in all the concepts is accommodating the desire lines of pedestrians. There will be pedestrians coming from the new development. There already are pedestrians coming from Byron, coming from Churchill, the busy intersection, Highcroft. We've tried to accommodate these as best we can in all situations, looking for the existing desire lines and the ones that we anticipate. Once we're into the space, we do hope to provide a spot to rest and provide a bit of a buffer from the hustle on the street. There's traffic there, and it'd be nice to get a little bit of separation from that, but keeping sight lines open so that people can look into the park and enjoy, and people can look out of the park and enjoy. And one more element is adding trees. As I said, we're intending to keep what we can, but we definitely want to be adding more as much as we can to provide a bit of a canopy and a ceiling that people can rest under, provide some shade, lots of benefits there, perhaps even some habitat value. And then finally, planting design will be integrated into the park. That isn't very detailed at this point, but one of the notions we had was that the planting design can pick up on the colors of the existing art installation. So again, just some things that are common to all of the concepts. And now here with concept number one, a few things I'd like to point out. One of the main features here is a winding, sinuous path that winds through the little parkette space and down to the end of the block. This we took as an inspiration from the art installation that is already there. There are lots of different forms in that shape, and we pulled one of those out to come up with something that was a little more rounded, winding, and sinuous. There are a variety of different materials in this concept, in terms of surface treatments and colors and things like that. And those are intended to define different places where people can settle into. In this particular concept, I'd say we've got a higher proportion of soft landscape. That would be planting of trees or lawn. There's more of that as opposed to the hard surfaces, the asphalt, the concrete, or pavers. Different seating opportunities, and this one probably has the most different seating opportunities, whether that be a table or a chair, a bench, a boulder, or a seating wall. All of those elements have been integrated into here to provide different opportunities for that. And finally, I think the last point that sets this one apart from the others is the end of Byron Place. We haven't defined that with a curb, as most streets are. Instead, there is no curb. The ground would be all the same level there, but it's defined with a series of bollards that would limit the extent to which fire access is required, and limit that cars would be able to enter into the space as it's designed. I think I'll move on to concept number two, Serene, and we can move through all three of these, and then we can move into some comment and discussion afterwards, I would suggest. So concept number two. This one again took some inspiration from the existing art installation. There are some stylized shapes for organic forms, organic plants, flowers, that sort of a thing. So this one has very organic shapes have found its way into this concept. Not necessarily quite as rounded or as winding, but there's still definitely some rounded edges, I'd say. A more selective palette of materials in here. There's more limited options in terms of, we have areas for planting, areas for lawn. The selection of different paving materials is much more limited as well, which was a conscious choice, just to provide some different options that people can explore, express opinions on. But also another point about that is that there's more hard surfaces in this concept. These were developed a while ago, as Murray mentioned, and that was back in the good old days when we could all get together and gather as freely as we wanted to. And that was part of the idea here, is to open up opportunities for people to gather. So more surfaces for people to walk on. Not that the lawn isn't also an opportunity for that as well. This one is much more open and flexible in terms of the spaces and the uses in it. Seating is offered in terms of benches and boulders. And the boulders also serve to define the end of the new Byron Place as well. You will see on the plan there are some bollards on the south side that separate the sidewalk space adjacent to the proposed building. But the street comes to an end. Again, there would be no curb there. There would be some boulders instead. But all these points are open for discussion. Number 3, Serene, if you could, please. A third option here, simply called number 3. I think you'll see this one is different and distinct from the others in that it's much more linear. The layout and the linear geometry is put out there again as another option to see what tweaks people's interests. And the linear, it's a little bit hard to see at this scale, but there's different materials and textures in some of the linear patterns. And the intention there was to pick up on some of the history of the streetcars that used to run down Byron Avenue. But those are just some of the details that can come out as the park evolves. But this one clearly much more linear, straight lines and square corners. Anything else to throw in there? And just, I guess, a point to mention about how as we're closer to the street, the space is much more open, wider spaces. But as you get deeper into the Parkette, it is intentionally designed to make the space a little more intimate, to invite people to slow down and have a rest, hopefully under the shade of some nice growing trees in there. Those, I think, are the highlights from the 3 different concepts. Is there anything else that you wanted to add there, Murray or Serene?
So thank you very much, Ryan, and we'll open things up, Fiona, in just a moment for comments and questions and answers. Ryan, do me a favor. There's one question in the chat, and maybe you can go into the drawings offline and in terms of the size of the space we're actually working with, and in terms of the space we're working with, in my mind, that's from the end of Byron Place to the existing walls on Churchill, and from the face of the building to Byron Avenue. I've guesstimated that might be about 15 meters by 20, but maybe you can go into a drawing and just confirm what those dimensions might be.
Sure, I will.
One of the things we'd like to hear from people this evening is, what's missing from that space today, and what do you like about the space today? What's missing from it, so we can start to get some ideas to what we might be able to do to meet the community's expectations. Just from my own personal perspective, I kind of think that this is an opportunity to create a bit of a meeting place with comfortable seating areas, lots of trees to provide shade, that kind of thing. Not a terribly active space, but a meeting space for residents of the new building and residents of the neighborhood. You're not far from coffee shops on Churchill and down on Wellington Street, so maybe you go and get yourself a coffee and a pastry, and you come up here and you enjoy it with your friends, sitting outside in this park. That's my own personal vision, but we're here to listen to what everybody else thinks might make this a very attractive public space. So, Fiona, with that, I think we're looking forward to getting feedback.
Cool. So I have some hands raised and I have some questions in the chat. So I'll alternate between the both. So yeah, as Murray said, the first question is, what is the length and width of the parking meters? So I think we're looking for that info.
I can
Marie,
jump in there.
pardon?
I can jump in with an answer there if that's
Yep.
okay.
Please.
The space on the west end, we'll call it, at the end of Byron Place, it's roughly 15 meters by 30 meters.
I was close.
Yep.
Thank you, Ryan.
And that's just a rough number.
Okay. And then Caleb has a question. How would the city pile the snow away for the fire truck access? Currently, they just pile it up at the end of Byron Place.
And that's a really good question. I don't have an answer right now, but it's something we'll certainly have to take into consideration.
Yeah, I can, it's Andrew McCrate, the planner on the file. I can add into that as Marie was mentioning at the beginning of the meeting, how Byron Place has to be preserved for a fire access route, which is true. I know that early discussions with operations also came back that they need to keep that place as well as that hammerhead design, because they do frequently use this area as a turnaround area for snow plowing vehicles in the neighborhood. I don't know the answer to the question about piling, but we can look into that with this new design.
Okay, I see Helen's hand is raised. Helen, you're welcome to unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you, Fiona. So I just wanted to advocate for keeping the space as green as possible. The site at Byron Place, as we all know, is going to be quite overdeveloped, and we're losing a lot of green space around the site and a number of trees as well. So I'm just raising my voice to, as I said, advocate for this space to be as green as possible and to contribute to the canopy of Westboro, which is losing its canopy at an alarming rate because of development. And I wondered who will be responsible for this site. Will it be the city, and will this be contributing to the city's green space? And will the trees be maintained by the city?
So Andrew's answer in the chat was going to be mine as well. This will be a city-owned park, and they will be maintaining it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to a chat question next, and then afterwards, Ed, you can ask your question. Oh, sorry, we've kind of just answered this. Who owns this area? Who will do the upkeep? And then what kind of lighting is possible? So it'll be city property. City will be responsible for the upkeep. And then what kind of lighting is possible?
Lighting will certainly be an integral part of the design, and we're going to want it to be pedestrian scale, soft lighting, and not creating any light pollution. But lighting will certainly be a factor in this design. It's a good question.
Okay, thank you. Ed, if you still have a question, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you go back to concept 1, please? It seems to me that pathway is rather meandering for only 30 meters. If you're a toddler, this is exciting, but I'm wondering if adults are going to like all that twisting and turning just to go 30 meters. Obviously it's aesthetic, but what's the purpose of the meandering?
That's a fair comment, and it's certainly something that even occurred to me. And so as we said, we're just putting up a number of concepts. I don't think that we would land here because of that exact reason. So it's a good comment and a good question, but I don't think that we're going to. Your point's well taken. There's natural desire lines that adults follow. We all take the shortest route from point A to point B when we're trying to get from the corner to the front door of this building, or if we're trying to get from the corner over to the intersection of Byron Place and Highcroft. We're not going to wander around like that. So that's something that will certainly evolve as we move forward.
I like the idea of a meeting place and would suggest that the benches be far enough apart so that you can have a conversation with a friend, etc. and not be distracted by the conversation happening right next to you from another group of people. My final question is, this is obviously not for young children. Are there going to be young children in the adjacent building? And if so, where is the closest place they can go to play?
There certainly is the possibility that there will be younger children in the building. There's a mixture of 1 and 2 and 2+ bedrooms in the building as it's currently planned. So those 2-bedroom, 2+ bedrooms might have young families in them. So it's once again a very good question. I'm not sure where the nearest park is that would actually have a play structure in it.
Their garden would probably be the most significant one.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Sorry,
Where was that?
Clare Gardens Park.
Right. Okay.
how far is that?
It's approximately at the corner of Clare and what's the
Iona?
It's 1 block over from
Athlone.
Highcroft,
yeah
isn't it?
Athlone, yeah, Athlone, yeah.
Yeah, Patrick's right. It's a significant distance. It's, a good 500 meters away. Several hundred meters anyways.
So that does lead to a question which we were actually discussing with staff earlier today is, is this or is this not an appropriate location for a small play structure for young children? That's a conversation we can have. I think there's some concern that it's awfully close to 2 very busy streets, and we may not want to be encouraging informal child play in this location, but once again, it's something we can explore.
Okay, thank you, Ed. I have a few questions in the chat, and then Naomi has her hand raised. So Judy with the Wellington Village BIA is asking, do these plans specify the species of trees? That was really hard for me to say, I'm sorry.
Not yet, we're very early in the game, but certainly by the time we're done, they will.
Perfect. And Naomi, if you're ready, I've just asked you to unmute. You can ask your question.
Thanks, Fiona. I have one comment and then a question. The one comment in concept number 2, I do have some concerns about the boulders randomly being there, especially at night, and being tripping hazards. I think I understand the concept and the concept with hard surfaces, but unless they're fairly tall, unless those objects are fairly large, I think they may be something to think about. I don't find them terribly attractive as they are now, but I just do think it's a tripping hazard, especially at night. Jeff's tilting his head. And the only reason why I'm saying that is that when you come wandering through that section, it's depending on how well lit it is. If somebody's coming running through, I just think the way they're randomly placed, it may be something to think about. So, and it's also hard spaced too.
Sorry, somebody's showing me something. No editorial comment there.
Okay, sorry. Anyways, that's just that's my comment on that. Second thing I have a comment on is with respect to green space, and it's a little different than what Helen was trying to get at. But going back to Helen's concept that we are losing a lot of green space from the development, my concern is twofold. With a lot of hard space, we're looking at a lot of runoff from the rain, and as well, if we had more grass and trees, I think that would actually help with just generally the runoff in the neighborhood, which can be, especially at melting period, it's really horrific down our street. And as well, snow storage. As the snow plows, I'm just going to point out, Andrew, the snow plows were up and down our street at 3:30 a.m. for about an hour, and they sit and idle outside your house at 3:30 in the morning, especially where your bedroom sits right along Jason the street. I'm a little concerned with this much, this much concrete and so forth. There's no place to store the snow, and all it's really going to do is, to me, cause some concern with respect to that. How do they clear that? How do they clear Byron Place, and where do they put the snow from there? So So I don't know if there's like some thinking around like not just spring and summer and fall, but rather how are they going to manage winter and snow removal? So thank you.
Yep, that's a good question. Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. We have some comments and questions in the chat. So Helen's comment, we would appreciate that new trees that are planted be a substantial size and not the whip size or ornamental seedlings that are typically planted. Very valid. Joan is asking, what were the planning priorities that were set out before the designs were prepared? Without knowing the priorities / objectives, it is not easy to determine whether any of these concepts meet them. For example, green space is a great priority.
So, a good question. The answer to that question is that there weren't any priorities set out when we developed these concepts. I think one of the reasons for the meeting this evening and follow up after this evening is to actually identify what the priorities would be for the community that we could, attempt to address through a refinement in the design for the park. So I'm hearing a theme which I wholeheartedly agree with, which is to maximize the soft landscaping, maximizing the green space, maximizing the tree cover, while at the same time creating comfortable meeting spaces where you could have a conversation with a friend and the neighbor. So we're listening this evening and hoping to divine what those priorities might be, but we'll certainly come back to the community through Jeff's office to further that dialogue.
Thank you, Murray. I have no more questions in the chat and I have no hands raised. So I'll freestyle here for a minute and maybe give folks a chance. Okay, perfect. We have a comment. Good timing. Ensure it is fully accessible. Yeah, ensure the park is fully accessible to people with disabilities and those who use mobility devices. Winding paths and pathways on a road, random boulders are challenging. Mike, do you maybe want to speak to how this will have to adhere to accessibility standards with the city?
Yeah, and anything that is done from a parks and open space perspective has to meet the minimum guidelines, and City of Ottawa actually has extended guidelines for that. We haven't looked at these concepts in any in-depth review as of yet, primarily because of what Maria's indicated. We're looking for priorities to further define these concepts before we get into those details, but it's an automatic requirement, so it will be looked at.
Perfect. And Heather Mitchell, you raised your hand. If you're ready, I will ask you to unmute and you can ask your question. Yep, you're
Hi
unmuted.
there. Hi, I think I'm unmuted. Sorry, Murray, I just wanted some clarity. So the gray areas, that's pavement, is that right? On all three maps?
Yeah, I saw your question in the chat, and yes,
Yeah.
so that the comment was valid that this concept 2, I think it is, there's an awful lot of hardscaping, whether it's asphalt or concrete, whereas as you go through the concept, some of them have more, some of them have less. But yeah, the gray is some form of hardscape, whether it's asphalt or concrete or pavers.
And vehicles are allowed there, or is that just specialized vehicles for special use?
On Byron Place to the front door is basically going to be available for emergency services, loading and unloading, drop-offs and pickups and deliveries.
Okay, so limited use, yeah. So how does the little windy path work? So is that just depicted through paving, different colored pavement, different colored stone, or is it gravel, or how is that working? That
would probably, if we were to do something like this through Byron Place, it would probably be with interlock. It might be a different colored paving, but it would more likely be interlock.
Okay. I think the curvy stuff is lovely myself. I think it's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Okay, thanks. And I should have noted Heather's with the Westboro,
Community Association.
yeah, Westboro Community Association, Westboro Village Community Association. A few more questions in the chat, and then I have Jeff's hand raised. Naomi's asking if we will be able to see will we be able to see new concepts post meeting? So yes, absolutely. This is kind of what I said earlier, but I should have teased it out more, the first step in a longer process. So I had one email list that I think I used to contact some folks for this meeting, but if you weren't on that for whatever reason, you just shoot our office an email. And I think Andrew will also be sending folks updates on this as well. So as we go forward and keep refining this design, you're going to get updates on it the same way we did with the development application proposal. Maybe staff want to speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. And I was going to say, if anyone has any comments or questions that they think about after this meeting as well, also feel free to email me those specific to this Parkette. The whole idea here is that we're getting feedback on the initial concepts that Novatech has prepared. You don't have to go and choose any specific concept. You can give us feedback about what you like, what you don't like, what's working. And the goal is that through the site plan process, we'll end up focusing on one concept and then have conditions of approvals that'll move that into a further design detail as it becomes more of a public space. So that's kind of the goal of today, is to start thinking about some of these ideas. And absolutely, I can imagine there'll be other concepts that emerge as a result of this discussion and any feedback we get afterwards.
Perfect. And sorry, towards the end of the evening, I'll make sure that I'll put in the chat our email and Andrew's email address in case anyone doesn't have them. Shops on the lower floor have been proposed. Will they be taking advantage of the green space? Will they use the space as a parking lot while they shop? And then I will go to you, Jim.
So the building has been designed so there is actually patio space outside those retail spaces on the Churchill side of the building. So if we end up with a small cafe or coffee shop on the ground floor, there will also be seating areas on Churchill Avenue. The Parkette obviously isn't intended to be an area for parking. There may be short-term parking, but it'll be, as I say, short-term parking in the Hammerhead on Byron Place. Sorry, was there more to that than that, Fiona?
I think you've addressed it. Will they use that space as parking while they shop? Yeah. Okay, Jeff, you're able to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thanks, Fiona. Between all the different concepts, I like the one that has the greatest amount of green space, obviously. And I'm sure, Andrew, you're going to take that away, and Marie will take that away, and Ryan. You mentioned interlock, and I've been looking at that in the first concept since the presentation began. I'd ask you not to use too much interlock unless we get a heck of a warranty on it. Interlock, we've had some poor experiences with interlock not lasting in the ward and then not being repaired by the city, which is extremely frustrating because it can be a real trip hazard. One of the things I wanted to put out to everybody who's attending this evening is, when I look at the existing space, it doesn't look to me like it's probably very well used, but if there are patterns that are important to the community in terms of how people move through the site, or if they actually use the site for anything, I'd be interested in hearing that too. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, Fiona.
Thanks for that, Jeff, and I agree. If it is being used in a way now that we need to reinforce or supplement, that would be useful information. I fully appreciate your comment about interlock. It looks great in the first 5 years or even 10 years, and then it starts to heave with frost, and it can become a bit of a trip hazard, which is unfortunate. There was a question about this concept I saw in the chat about whether there were tables in the meandering curve, and yes, at the far west end, in that tan area where there are the 3 white dots with 4 smaller dots around them, those are tables with seating around them. And so, that this particular concept has a combination of tables, a couple of benches. There's one under the tree in that area, and then there's another one at the far other end of the park down near Highcroft, and then the boulders that Ryan mentioned in his presentation. So this particular concept provides a number of options in terms of seating areas. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. A few more questions and comments in the chat. Does the position of the turnaround need to be in the same location? I think we've talked about this before, but maybe we can answer it again.
It is a constant between all three of the concepts. The length of Byron Place, as I said initially, was to make sure that emergency vehicles have access to the front door of the proposed building. And then, the hammerhead is there to enable those emergency vehicles to turn around and exit going forward back out to Highcroft rather than having to back out to Highcroft. So there's not a great deal of flexibility in the location of that hammerhead.
And Murray, just to add to that, to confirm in case it's not understood in these drawings, that is not the existing location of the hammerhead that's on Byron Place now. This is actually shifting it to the east towards Highcroft.
Yeah, quite significantly. That's correct. Thank you, Andrew.
We can see that in slide 1 if we scroll back.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little faded there.
I don't know, Serene, if you have the ability to highlight where it is, but it's just beside the existing art, as I recall.
Yes. It is. It's between the art installation and those existing trees. Yeah.
Kind of goes from the E to the PL.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well
the
said.
edge of the E until the edge of the L.
Excellent cartography. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Well done, counselor. Thank you.
A
So who's doodling?
A few more comments. Oh, sorry. Was there anything else on that before I move on? No. Okay. So some comments. More green space will make this space very dog friendly. There are tons of dogs in the neighborhood, plus in the new apartment building. Absolutely. Another comment, I would advocate for as much green as possible. Grasses would also work well. A question, who is paying for the Parkette remediation?
Oh, I saw that one coming. So the understanding is that our client will be paying for the improvements to this space.
Happy to hear that, because that was my understanding as well.
Well, we'll have to work within a reasonable budget, but that's the understanding.
And then the ongoing maintenance of it, though, will be up to the city.
Correct.
Where trees are warranted, where you're putting new trees in. And I'm sorry, this is probably something we can get into in detail later, but I'm just wondering whose job it will be to ensure that warranted trees, if they don't make it, are replaced. And that's pretty in the weeds. Yeah,
I'm sure that'll be the same as the standard requirement on the site plan,
okay.
Counselor. And I can't remember, Andrew, whether it's 1 year or 2 years, but they're the standard warranty in a site plan.
Okay. 2 years, yeah.
Thanks.
Some more comments. We need that site for garage sales to raise money to fight all the developers.
Okay.
I drove by. I remember seeing the big fundraising effort. I drove by it. I was en route to New York City, so I couldn't stop. But I saw that day. It was awesome. No offense, Mary. Would love a pedestrian crossing over Byron, even if it is close to the existing lights at Churchill and Byron. People want to continue their walk down Byron pathway on the other side of the road.
I don't know if there's anybody on the call that's fully qualified to comment on that, but obviously you can cross Byron at the lights at Churchill. The next opportunity for you to cross Byron legally as you go east, I'm not sure where it is, quite frankly, but it may be a fair distance down the road. I don't know for sure. Interesting question.
Jeff, you're muted.
Yeah, I know we are putting a new raised pedestrian as part of the Byron Highcroft Athlone in a few blocks over. Fiona, can you make a quick note of that? Because that is something that we can talk to the project team who are doing the sewer renewal right now, since they'll be digging the street up.
Yep.
Are we talking like a full signalized crossing or like a PXO situation?
The city won't put a just a regular crosswalk through there because it's not a controlled intersection. So if we were going to do that, it would have to be something like what's at Hilson or what we're putting in at Tweedsmuir. But that's an answer I can get from Kevin Gibbs, who's doing the sewer overhaul and then rebuilding the street.
Okay. Dean has added, I walk by that space every day. I use it regularly with my dog. In the summertime, a woman from Highcroft holds exercise groups in the green space. Regularly, people use the benches that are in front of the old car sales office. That's good to know. And I'm noticing too, like during pandemic times, a lot more use of outdoor spaces for exercise. I'm across from Somerset Square, which is like barely a park. There's like no green space, but there's an exercise group that was meeting there until the snow came down. So that's definitely a good point that we should be cognizant of. Maureen says, thanks for the answer on tables. Comment, back in the day, Byron Place was not blocked off at Churchill. Just saying. Presently, little green space, since there is a street, Byron Place, often see people sitting on the benches. And I noticed Judy Lincoln's hand is up, so I'll ask you to unmute, and then I'll get to the rest of the chat questions.
I was just going to say, I know this is outside Westboro Village BI. It's sort of just on the other side of where we are. But this summer, some of the biggest feedback we've been getting is more trees and more seating and more shade in the neighborhood, because people are out and they're looking for places to go. And that's feedback we're getting in the BIA office. And I know I asked about the species of trees, but we lost a number of the honey locusts this summer, and all the trees in the neighborhood are the same variety that seem to be publicly planted. So I would really encourage more diversity in the planting so that if there's a bad season, we're not losing all the trees at once.
Yeah, we'll be looking for diversity, and I'm not sure if you caught Ryan's comment, and it actually was, I think, a response from an email submission that we've already had on this, is that we may be looking for, trees that match in their fall colors would match the art, the tree of life that's on the corner, which I think is a really neat concept. If we could have trees that in the fall that are kind of a flaming orange and a bright yellow to pick up on that. So yeah, we'll be looking at a variety.
Judy, if there are trees that are overused, can you tell us what those are?
Oh, she's still muted. Hold on.
I would say along Richmond Road, it's a lot of honey locusts. I think that's what it is. I think it's the honey locust, the big ones.
Quite likely.
And they are quite brittle this year, and we've had 2 taken down in the fall, and the health of quite a few others aren't doing well. And then I'd say there's a number of trees too that didn't survive recent installations, recent plantings. We'll leave it that way. But there's a lack of shade, and it's something that we hear regularly in the BIA office from the general public. Like, it's just there's no shade, and there's not a lot that we can do when the trees aren't healthy. And they're all the same variety.
Point taken.
Thank you, Judy. Jeff, I will get to you shortly. I just want to get through a few more chat comments. With tables and dog
I'm in line.
walkers. What?
I'm in line.
Okay. With tables and dog walkers, how will we be able to ensure that garbage doesn't become an issue?
Oh, I'd love to hear Mike Russett's answer to that question, because that's I'm sure an issue for every city park across the city. Obviously, there will be a garbage receptacle as part of this plan, but I don't know if Mike has any advice.
No, essentially it's the same all over the city. There are issues with garbage pickup schedules, timeframes on how often, and unfortunately people using garbage cans for the wrong reasons, household waste and whatnot. So it is an ongoing problem, and is always an issue with operations.
Yeah, that's something that the city has to get better at.
Okay, are there a minimum number of trees that are required to be planted on the site?
The answer to that is no. It'll all be part of the evolution of the design, but the message is clear, or at least what I'm hearing so far is plant as many trees as we can, and I certainly buy into that principle.
A comment in response to an earlier comment. That is a good point, that one would traverse this green space to get to the other side of Byron to walk to Loblaws. This does remind me, I didn't know when to say this, but because we mentioned Loblaws, I will mention it right now. In the next 6 months to a year, but it'll probably be closer to 6 months, we'll be doing the same process for a Parkette associated with the build at 190 Richmond Road, which construction for that site will be getting underway shortly, and you folks in the hood will start to see that. So we're getting our ducks in a row, but it'll be a very similar process. It'll be this kind of meeting. It may be Mike or a different park planner. The applicants will be involved. They're paying for it. But we'll do a consultation and detailed design process that will take a few months to finalize. But the reason why I raised that is it's kind of struck me with Jeff's comment about the road work that's happening, that upcoming infrastructure project, this comment about traversing Byron. Between the two park projects, or maybe like we can't get a crossing here, we may be able to get a crossing in close proximity to that park, which is just a little further down. So there may be some relationships that we can utilize, or if we can't get a play structure here, we can absolutely make sure that there's a play structure there, because it's going to be not directly abutting Byron. It's set back behind that like fenced tree line, and then abutting the rear yard properties of the next street over. So just flagging that for a future. Someone's commenting on that note, Tweesmer is the nearest crossing. What would the time frame of this space? What would be the time frame of this space? Would it be after the building completion?
I think the answer to that is yes, it would be after the building completion, that this space would get destroyed during construction of the building. So it's quite, I would expect it would be completed after the building goes up.
And staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's why we do that process now. So we have shovel ready plans, so that as we're getting a better sense for when the building is going to be completed, then we start to move forward when it's appropriate, so that we're not sitting like a year with a completed building and waiting for the park and then doing the consultation, right? So it should line up. Jeff, you've been very patient.
Thanks, Fiona. There's a very large light standard on the south side of this, in front of the used car lot. I'm actually guessing, given its proximity to your building, that you would be relocating that. So as we develop the parks plan, just something to keep in mind.
It's a great detailed question. I think that it'll play into the earlier conversation about the appropriate scale of lighting for this park, but I'm sure that light standard is going.
Thanks, Fiona. If I have any further questions, I can raise my hand.
Okay. Will the existing mature trees remain?
Sorry,
and
well,
how many? And it's a two-part question. And how many woodpeckers? 3 trees on Highcroft and Clare affected this year.
So we're certainly going to maintain as many of the trees as we can. Some of them aren't terribly healthy that are there today. I think there's one that will be coming out with the relocated hammerhead, but generally speaking, we're going to maintain as many as we can.
Okay. Where will all the new Canada Post mailboxes be located?
I saw that question, and I'm not sure what they're referring to. In terms of this building, there will be an interior mail room and mailboxes inside the building.
Marnie says, thanks. Thank you for coming, Marnie. Please be advised that evening sunsets on summer evenings come from the north in Gatineau when placing benches/seating. That's great to know. Judy has a comment about wasps in the urban parks and parklets. Parkettes? Is this area going to host the trees lost due to the new build, or will they only be net new trees?
So I didn't follow that question, Fiona.
Is this area going to host the trees lost to the new build, or will they only be net new trees?
I don't, I'm not sure I understand the question, but I don't think any of the trees that are going to be removed are transplantable. So that they will all be new nursery stock that goes in here.
Okay. That's the end of the chat questions. Again, I will thoughtfully delay in case anything is going to come up in the next few seconds. Jeff, do you have any comments you want to make while we wait to see if anything else is coming in?
Sorry, I'm seeing Judy has come in. Oh, sorry, I don't know, Judy, if you meant for that to be private, but I'm going to make it public. I have just busted your anonymity. There is a question here from an unnamed person who is attending this meeting. Are there going to be electrical hookups or anything in the park? You know, a few people have spoken about gatherings, implying events. It's hard to do without electrical. That's something actually that I encourage as well, is a power pack. It doesn't need to be a full event power pack, but having electrical hookups allows people to plug in you know, a small sound system. If you're hosting a barbecue or a fundraiser or a bake sale to fight development, you want to have some good development fighting tunes pumping. So is it possible to bring power in here?
I'm going to turn that question over to Mike. I don't see why not. I just don't know practically how that works when we bring power into a city park. But I certainly understand the question, and being a fan of outdoor music, if we can facilitate that.
Yeah, it's a common ask now, and it's actually a common item that we include in most parks if we can, because there are often there are community wants and community needs for a special event, evenings, nights, weekends. So it's something we try to accommodate. Generally, it requires a dedicated park service for metering and whatnot, but that's something that we can look through and work through in the design.
Yeah, we host in Somerset Square across from Fiona, you know, once a year we have a vigil for Abdirahman Abdi, and that, you know, needs a sound system for the speakers so people can, you know, project and whatnot. So obviously you don't need to put a power pack in here that's going to handle, you know, a large concert, but you know, enough for a PA system if somebody's hosting a special event.
Good question. Thank you.
Marie McClure added, they were specifying about the mailboxes, the existing super mailbox in the new driveway.
I saw that question, and I'm struggling with it because I'm not sure where that super mailbox is. If it's on Highcroft, it may need to get relocated, but I'm not aware of a super mailbox on Byron Place, but that's just maybe my oversight.
Okay. And Irene is asking, is there a schedule now for the start and completion of the construction of the building?
So at this point in time, no. One of the things that we're having to take into consideration is the city project. All of Byron Avenue and Byron Place is going to get ripped up this summer, so that we've had a conversation with our client, and he has no intentions of starting this year, so that he's got heavy equipment in here at the same time that the city does. Next year, the city is working on Highcroft, so he could start next year and use Byron Place kind of as his staging area for construction. But the earliest that construction would start here would be the spring of 2022.
Thank you. And as we've noted throughout the development application process, when they are ready to put shovels in the ground, we'll be hosting a meeting exactly like this. Although hopefully if it's in 2022, maybe we can do it in person, but it'll be a pre-construction meeting with the neighbors. So anyone who is impacted and lives close by, we'll have a detailed, informative meeting about the construction timelines, the milestones, the truck entry and egress, and things like that. And yes, no construction vehicles on Highcroft.
For sure.
Judy has your hand is raised. If you are ready, I will ask you to unmute.
Sorry, my answering machine, because we're old, was going off right behind me and I didn't want it to be on. I was just gonna say with the electrical, the other thing that also makes it easy to deal with, especially if you're thinking tables and chairs, is to dealing with the wasps if there's a water hookup. And I had asked you, Jeff, because I didn't know if it was standard to have electrical in parks anymore.
Yeah, to the best, not always. This one, I presume, would be easier than most because it is sort of immediately adjacent to, a fully developed building that's got hydro in it.
Mhm.
It's usually not cheap, but I'm very interested to explore that. Water is something else, Marie, actually, that's interesting, and because
Yeah. It comes to my mind because we deal with the wasps in Winston Square, and we could deal with it if we could spray it down, but there's no water in the public park, right? So it's a challenging one that can be dealt with by the city easier too if there's already water hookups there. That's just my question.
yeah, no, we'll capture that for sure.
Naomi is asking, if the city is going to promote events in this green space, will the city be dealing with permitting, noise, bylaw, and parking?
So right now there's a concept of putting electrical in. That would be a whole other discussion as to whether or not it would be a bookable park. Not every park is bookable. Whoever the counselor is at the time would probably want to have a chat with neighbors about whether or not it's publicly available to book. I assume a park of this size would not be something that the general public could book through the city. I think what I would conceive of here is that if neighbors wanted to have an annex to their street party and take advantage of the space, if a yoga instructor wanted to have a class in this space, they would probably just talk to the counselor, who would then arrange the necessary permissions with the city. Certainly, if I were counselor when this is open, I wouldn't be seeking to make it a publicly bookable space. I would want to work directly with, say, the Westboro Community Association. We have that arrangement for Somerset Square with the Hintonburg Community Association and the Wellington Village BIA. We've kind of kicked the city out of there. And if people want to host small neighborhood focused events, they just talk to one of us and we just say yes or no, rather than making it a big publicly available thing. Because, this is going to be close to a lot of different residences, the new building, as well as the residents on Highcroft. I would probably not want to see, constant events in here. But I would want to have the ability, if, a neighborhood focused event was taking place, to have the ability to, put in a PA so you can get some good development fighting tunes going.
Okay. There's some comments about the mailbox that we're trying to clarify before. I think Murray is reading those, so that's been noted.
Yep.
Murray, can you get back to our office with that sometime
Well,
in
the
the next couple of
chat
weeks?
says it's on Highcroft, approximately where the new access to the garage is. It hasn't shown up on any of our drawings, but that doesn't mean they're not wrong. If it is in the middle of the driveway, it'd have to shift either to the north or the south.
And that's something you'll have to do with Canada Post.
Exactly.
It just doesn't show up in any of the street views. Anyways, but yeah, could you loop my office into that just so for my own edification as well?
Okay.
Please and thank you.
Patrick wants to know, Jeff, if you're running next election.
Oh, well, let's get through 2021 first. Oh my Lord.
Seriously. Someone's commenting, power was run to Clare Gardens Park when it was rebuilt. Surely it can be done here. Yep.
Yeah.
Another comment, I hope, yep, sorry.
That's something actually, the more I think about it, the more I want power in the park. And that's something I'd be willing to kick in for as well.
Okay, be careful.
I know. Sorry.
Well,
Fiona.
you've got a really big cash in lieu of parkland fund,
Yeah, but
Councillor.
it's basically spent, so don't.
It
don't
just
look at
keeps
the
getting
number.
bigger.
Sorry, Fiona.
Anyways, that's another discussion. Because if you tell them you're going to kick in, then we're going to foot the whole bill, I feel like. But anyway.
No.
Okay. Naomi says, I hope that the neighborhood and Westboro BIA would talk to the residents as to whether or not they would want this or not. And then Judy adds that it's outside of the Westboro Village BIA boundaries. Okay, they're talking back and forth. I'm just going to leave that. A comment about the mailbox, and yeah, okay. Heather Mitchell's hand is raised. I will go to you. Please go ahead and unmute.
Oh, hi. Yeah, no, I just wanted to make the point that to my mind, there was this discussion about events, and I feel we kind of drifted off into a discussion on events. I do not see this park as an event space at all. It's very small. It's very sweet space meant for relaxing. That's just the way I see it. And I take Jeff's point. It's nice to have the power, just should there be small community things. So I think that's where it would sit, just very informal things. I also just wanted to say that I really don't see this in any way, shape, size as a place for children. I'll let others discuss that, but I think it's too busy a corner. So I'll just leave it at that. But I do like the idea of lots of green space and just a casual relaxing area and a buffer for the new building that's going in there.
Cool. Okay, I think we can move to wrapping up. I don't see any more burning comments, but we should talk about how the process will progress from here. Andrew, is that something, do you want me to speak to that, or would someone else like to speak to that?
I literally missed the few seconds where you were asking me something because a kid just yelled at me. If you could repeat.
I think we're just wrapping up. There's a few outstanding, there's not a lot of additional comments coming in. So I was just, I can kind of discuss next steps unless you wanted to, or someone else wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of next steps, so what I see happening is that obviously the applicant team and the city staff involved in this call will take away what we heard today. Fiona, you'll give us all the recordings of the questions so we can go through there and make sure that nothing was missed. There's obviously the recording of the video itself. I imagine in terms of next steps, what will happen is Novatech may produce some other concepts that reflect the comments that we heard tonight. And on some of those sort of finer detail things like snow clearing and maintenance and that sort of thing, I'll take that back to my team as information that we need to coordinate on some of these items. Otherwise, in the interim, as I said earlier, if anyone has any additional questions or comments on this specific topic, they can definitely email me, and I'll put that in my email address in the chat right now. I don't know if Murray wants to add to that, or Fiona, if you had a plan.
I was just going to say, if, like Jeff said earlier, if folks have thoughts after this meeting, or if anyone wasn't able to attend this meeting and wants to follow up via email, you can just email us your comments. Yeah, so Andrew's put his email address, and I'll put Jeff and myself as well. And then if anyone else wants to say, yep, Jeff, please.
Sorry, I just the events discussion is getting a little bigger there. This is going to be a nice neighborhood place to pause and rest. Somebody asked about getting power into the park in case anyone ever wants it. I remember the hoops I had to jump through with the city, and finally Ottawa Community Housing did me a solid a few years ago just to get power into not Dundonald, Roy Duncan. So that we could light the Christmas tree. You know, that was about 2 years of work with the city in order to get that power. It's always better to have something there than not. I just want to reiterate, I don't anticipate that this is going to be an event space, but it is nice if you want to have the community barbecue. Because remember, you can close Byron Place too for a block party. If the residents who are in this building or the residents of Highcroft wanted to close Byron Place for an afternoon, there's an easy process. You can all do this on your own streets as well, to close your street from noon until 10 o'clock at night and have a block party. Sometimes there's a need for power in those sorts of things. But I just want to reiterate, I'm not anticipating that this would be a bookable space where there would be regular events. But it's better to have the power than not have the power. So I'll leave it there.
So Fiona, I just want to thank everybody. I think that, at least from my perspective, I think the message is pretty clear in terms of where the priorities should be as we refine the concepts for this Parkette. Certainly look forward to any further comments that you may have, either directly through Jeff's office or through Andrew's office. But we will be working on a revised concept, and we'll be back to have another conversation.
Folks, thank you very much for coming out. It is I just found out today at Planning Committee that we have a long weekend, and I think it's Monday that we're off, right?
Yes, but you're
Counselor,
also
you've
off
earned it
tomorrow.
after today and yesterday. You've earned a long weekend.
You know what? Lisa gave me tomorrow off too, so it's going to be a nice 4-day break. This was a nice way to cruise into that after a couple of
Heavy
tense.
agendas, shall we
Heavy
say?
agenda, shall we say. It'll be all the counselors are looking forward to getting away from each other for a little while. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the break. Stay home and stay safe, okay? Have a good night. Bye.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Fiona.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you.
I'm just making sure I've saved the chat. Okay, thank you.